We are in between sermon series. So last week we ended soul food, and next week we start another one. And I said, so what would you like me to preach on? And Aaron said, you pick. I said, oh, great. Sometimes I like to have boundaries and things not just so free willing. And so I started really thinking, and this month I celebrate my birthday. It was at the beginning. So it kind of gets you thinking about memories and, just where you've been over the past year. And I thought, that's a good place to start. I think at times it's helpful for us to kind of look back and appreciate, this journey that we've been on. And then as I was starting the beginning of this week, I did something really crazy. I spoke at a conference via a video live feed to other government communicators in Australia. I don't know about you, but I'm Megan from Fairborn, Ohio, and I'm speaking to a bunch of people in Australia that are actually interested in thinking I have to say something of value. And after I was done speaking, I got a message from kind of one of the coordinators, and she said, we got great feedback from your talk. We'd love to have you do it again, and maybe in person this time. I was like, well, absolutely. I'll go to Australia. And then I had like 5 people say, you can't go there without me. I'm like, okay. But again, it really kind of, it stops me in my tracks sometimes, because it's kind of that moment of, how did I get here? I look past, some of the things that I've done in my 38 years of life, and, I get to this point and I'm thinking, never in my wildest dreams would I have ever imagined that I would be speaking to people in Australia and they would be interested in what I had to say. And then I get, the ever proverbial memories on Facebook. Anybody like the memories that you get on Facebook every day? Sometimes, right? So these are ones that were yesterday, since I did the PowerPoint yesterday. Couldn't add them today because I've not seen them today. So I know these are really hard to read, so I'm going to read them, and they're really fun because they kind of just show the span of years. I'm on Facebook since it pretty much began. And let me just say, when you first started on Facebook, you said some really dumb stuff. Megan is sitting at home today. Nobody cares. Oh, gracious. So we'll start with the one up here. So this is 2 years ago. This is my memory from 2 years ago. Is she here? Yes, Claire is here. Claire talks about you. Sorry, kiddo. It says, I love my children. John took Claire shopping and got a few homework supplies. We are forever losing or giving away our pencils. So they got pencils and a non-electric pencil sharpener. That's key. Claire walks into the room as John was telling Jackson what was purchased, and she looks at John and asks, oh yeah, we got an old 80s. I said, a what? Claire said, an old 80s, and John looked at her and said, Claire, you mean old school. This is an old school sharpener. So that was 2 years ago. The one on this bottom corner is 3 years post my foot surgery. So that was my first 5K after I had my foot surgicated on. And, it was kind of a moment to smile yesterday and think, man, look how far I've come. I was 2 weeks post-op thinking I would never walk again, to seeing this and the smile on my face of my first 5K, and then knowing 2 years later I would run a full marathon. Again, it's just part of that journey. And then the top one is 7 years ago, so this was October 20th, 2011. And I said, so we were in the car on the way home, and Jackson says, me hungry, hungry hippo. Again, those are fun. We have other ways of bringing up our memories and seeing the journey. We have, photo albums and, whatnot. But the point of it is to kind of have this moment of, man, look where I was. And now look at where we are now. And this now may not be any better. I don't know. But, often as we progress through life and through our journey, these are two totally different things. And it just pause for a moment of, wow. I don't know how we got to where we're at, but look at what we're at. And often, we think this, how did I get here? And there's a saying that life is a journey, and it's a very factual statement. Life is indeed a journey, regardless of the type of journey we're on. We are all on a journey of some kind. We are constantly moving from one point to the next in life. And some days the journey is crazy, and it's filled with smiles, it's filled with belly laughing, and other days it is not so happy, and we are filled with tears and lots of hurt. And somewhere along the way, we kind of got this idea that life is straight and flat. It's a peaceful, easy feeling kind of life. We have plans, 5 to 10 year plans. We know exactly how things should go, where we're going to be, who we're going to be with, how many kids we will or will not have, and what we're going to be doing. Again, you've heard me talk about this. Guilty. This was us 6 months into marriage. We had our first 10 years planned out. And then we sat up, put our feet on the floor, and life inevitably happened. See, often reality is that the journey we're on looks more like a winding road filled with peaks, valleys, and even a few dead ends that force us to turn and head the other way. It's almost like the GPS lady that says rerouting, right? And then you pray she finds the right way to go. And so whether we like to admit it or even accept it, our journey that we're on, regardless of how it looks, helps shape and define who we are and how we live. And so our scripture this morning comes from the book of Exodus. And this particular scripture describes the journey the Israelite people took from slavery to freedom. And so what we find in this Exodus story is this moment at the Red Sea where the people of Israel were finally free from Pharaoh's rule. Free after 430 years in captivity. Pharaoh had finally given in and let God's people go. But what is as important as this moment at the Red Sea was the journey the Israelites took to get to that point. You see, this newfound freedom transpired because God went to a man named Moses and had a fireside chat with him. I got way more groans in the first service. Come on now. That was good. We met Moses at the burning bush, fireside chat. I tried. God said to Moses, Moses, I need you to go to Pharaoh and get my people out of Egypt. I promise I will be with you, and I will send your brother Aaron to help you. So Moses and his brother Aaron head out to see Pharaoh to talk some sense into him. They tell him, God said, let my people go. Now, Pharaoh at this point has two choices. He can accept the request and set the people free, or he could choose to deny the request, keeping the people enslaved, and then endure the plagues that God will bring upon Egypt. So anybody that knows, what did Pharaoh say? He said, nah, Bubba, no, I'm not doing that. So Pharaoh denies the request, and the water then is turned into blood. And if this were any other person, the water into blood would probably be enough to convince them to say, well, all right, if we're starting off with this, we'll just let them go. Like, that's who it is. However, this is Pharaoh, and he's kind of more stubborn than the average mule, right? So 8 more times, Moses and his brother go to Pharaoh and ask him to let God's people go. And 8 more times, Pharaoh says, what? Nope, not going to happen. And 8 more plagues come upon Egypt. But it was the 10th and final plague that caused Pharaoh to give in. The final plague was the angel of death, and the angel of death killed all the firstborn, both livestock and people. And this plague ended up killing Pharaoh's son. And in his moment of anger and grief, Pharaoh ordered that Moses and Aaron get the people out of Egypt. He said, leave. And all accounted for, there were anywhere from between 2 and 3 million Israelites that left Egypt. I don't know about you, but that's a lot of people to get moving. I can't even get my kids moving in a timely fashion. Imagine 2 million people. And then we get to Exodus 13:17. It says, when Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them on the road through the Philistine country, though that way was what? Shorter. What? For God said, if they face war, they might change their minds and return to Egypt. So God led the people around by the desert road toward the Red Sea. And the Israelites went up out of Egypt armed for battle. By day the Lord went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud to guide them on their way, and by night a pillar of fire to give them light, so they could travel by day or by night. Neither the pillar of cloud by day nor the pillar of fire by night left its place in front of the people. So the Israelites were constantly being led by God. They weren't wandering around wondering where to go. They didn't kind of do the whole lick their finger trick, see which way the wind was blowing, right? And follow it. They were led by God out of Egypt. We need to keep that in mind. This wasn't a situation where Moses looked out across the land and thought, whew, there's a lot of open space here. I wonder which way we should go. This wasn't a situation where if you ask me, don't ever ask me for directions, I'm just warning you. Even though 99.9% of the time I haven't a clue where I'm going, I will confidently tell you, let's go left. Left looks like a great way to go. That's not how it works. The people were led by God. Moses was at the front of the pack, but God was before them with a pillar of a cloud and a pillar of fire at all times. Now I want to go back to verses 17 and 18 because we need to pay attention to these two. God did not lead them along these shorter routes. Now, I don't know what you do before you leave for a trip, but I usually check my GPS maps. Is that what you do? Plug in the direction you want to go, the destination you want into, and then you look at the map, and I usually pick the shortest of the route, right? I mean, they often give you three, at least Apple and Google do. Right? So you pick the shortest of the three, right? Anybody else do that? All right. And I also use the estimated time of arrival as a challenge. I always beat it, even if it's by like a minute. Plus, you and I have been taught over and over that in order to get from point A to point B, it's usually wise to take the shortest, most direct path, correct? And yet God doesn't do this. He takes the Israelites the long way through the wilderness, which, if I was an Israelite, I might be a little upset. 430 years have been in captivity. Come on now. Can you get us out a little faster? Do we have the map? It's maybe a little hard to see. So the red lines, that is the thought way that they went. Now it looks like they even kind of do a little circle. A little circle around here for a little bit. So if you can't see, there's a dotted line that goes from the top of the land of Goshen, which is up here, and it's dotted across the top of where the Great Sea is at. Their destination was just on that other point of that. That is a much shorter route. If I'm looking at a map and I'm saying we have to go here, I'm looking at this point where we start and I'm thinking, oh great, we can just follow along the Great Sea and we will be there. Perfect. We'll be there in like 5 days. Excellent. God does not take them there. In fact, he takes them all the way down, up, and then around, does a little doo-doo, and then back up north. It's a long way to get to where they're going. I'm sure they had the backseat drivers. You know, why are we going this way? Do you really know how to get where we're going, Moses? Are you really sure God knows what he's doing? Are you reading the map upside down? I mean, are we sure, right? I don't know about you, but there have been moments in my life that I too have asked, God, why did you choose this way for me? There were a million other ways that we could have got to this particular point. Did we really have to take the scenic route? Now, I'm all for scenic, but I'm also for getting to a destination in a timely fashion. And it's in those moments of why that there have been times I've wanted God to kind of step out of my own story for just a moment and give kind of an aside, like you see often in plays. You know, and tell me and say, Megan, we're going to take this route because. God does that. That would be helpful. Yes? I could go with that. But sometimes I need to hear, this is why this road is so long. This is why this journey seems so tough. This is why this mountain is before you. I need to hear that. I don't know about you, but I'm still waiting. I have not yet had that experience where God steps outside of space and time and says, Megan, by the way, this is why this is happening. If you've had, please tell me your secrets. I would like to know. But what's cool about this story, at least for us, is that we see what God's purpose was for the longer route. The people didn't get to hear this because they were in the dark as much as you and I are for life. However, I take comfort that even though we may not know the purpose or even the destination, God is in control and has a plan and a reason for the direction that he takes us. Because we read that God did not lead them on the road through the Philistine country, though it was shorter. He led them around the desert road toward the Red Sea. God led them on a journey. Why? Because there were things on the horizon that the people couldn't see, but God could. And what couldn't they see? Well, they couldn't see the potential for a fierce battle. A battle that they might not be ready for. They were not warriors. They were wounded people coming out of 430 years of captivity. Their ability to make decisions, exert willpower, and take responsibility probably wasn't up to speed. And facing an army such as the Philistines probably would have terrified them, and their natural reaction would have been to turn and run, not to stay and fight. So maybe God takes us the long way because he knows our tendencies. And I had to kind of think on this one. Because God knew that if the Israelites faced battle, they would turn and run. The longer way didn't allow for a battle, at least not like this. So maybe God knows our tendencies when faced with danger and decisions and questions. Maybe God is trying to help us out by taking us the longer way. Maybe he's trying to set us up for success in the future. Maybe. Perhaps. Or maybe God takes us the long way so his glory can be revealed. Perhaps the shorter way is filled with danger, filled with problems and potential troubles. Perhaps the seemingly easier way out is just that. It's the easy way out. A way that leaves absolutely no mark on our life, no opportunity for us to remember it, no opportunity for us to acknowledge the greatness of God. No moments of, I couldn't have done this without the grace of God in my life. Or maybe God takes us the long way so we can experience something that will ultimately transform who we are and how we live. So perhaps there is a purpose behind the direction that God is taking me. Perhaps there is something else that I need to see, something else I need to experience, because maybe there is something on the other side that can't happen until I experience this, until I know how to deal with a struggle, fear, frustration, this wilderness. But the hard part is we don't like to experience that. We want the shorter route, and yet God says, trust me, I got this. God led the Israelites by day and night the long way through the wilderness. Chapter 14, verse 1. Then the Lord said to Moses, tell the Israelites to turn back. To turn back. To turn back. Not keep going forward, but to turn back. And encamp near Pi-Hiroth between Migdol and the sea. They are to encamp by the sea, directly opposite Baal-Zephon. I really just wanted to read you that scripture because there are a bunch of fun words in there. You see, God tells the Israelites to encamp near the shore of the Red Sea. And I really wish I could have been a fly on a camel. Can't be a fly on the wall. They have no walls. Because can you imagine the conversation when they stop near the shore of the Red Sea? Can you imagine the, I did not see this coming kind of moment? And the questions start to arise. Moses? The whole pillar of cloud and fire are doing the leading, but you think maybe, just maybe, we got off the path a little? I mean, look at this place. We can't go anywhere. It's going to take forever to get across this body of water, especially when we don't have any boats, and there's almost 3 million of us. So here they were. 2-3 million Israelites just chilling out by the Red Sea. Which wouldn't have been a problem, except that Pharaoh wasn't happy with his decision to let them go. And so Pharaoh leaves Egypt with his army to go take care of the Israelites. Verse 10. As Pharaoh approached the Israelites, they looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord, and they said to Moses, was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? Well, that's interesting. I'm pretty sure they were the ones crying out to God in Egypt in captivity. We continue. What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you, leave us alone? Let us serve the Egyptians? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians. It would have been better for us to be slaves. It would have been better for us to have no freedom whatsoever than to die in the desert. So they're stuck between this proverbial rock and a hard place. They begin to grumble. They begin to complain to Moses. They begin to question why he brought them to this point. They even go as far as saying, it would be better for us to be slaves than to be here. I totally get they're in quite the predicament. Right? They have Egyptians on horses behind them. nowhere to go ahead of them. They are like sitting ducks. I mean, at least when they were in Egypt as slaves, they were living and breathing. Now it appears they are doomed to die. But it would seem as if they had forgotten how completely rough life was, how it was their crying out, remember, their crying out to God that started all this in the first place. I mean, did they not remember what he did just weeks before the plague? And really, they kind of forgot the biggest question. Why would God go to such great lengths to get them out of Egypt, to bring them to this point in their journey to let them die? Why would he go to the great lengths of putting all the plagues together and having Moses and Aaron continually go to Pharaoh for him to bring them to this spot in life and say, you're on your own, see you later? They need some Snickers. They kind of grouchy. But we can't completely throw them under the bus. Right? I mean, do you ever do that? I know I do. We grumble. Do you grumble every once in a while? Every once in a while. Do we complain? Lord have mercy, we complain sometimes, right? Do we get frustrated? Do we lose sight of things when life gets a little tough? When we're in one of those mountains that we're climbing and it's really bumpy and we were doing all these switchbacks climbing up, we get a little frustrated. Lord, what in the world are you doing here, right? Change is often uncomfortable. And there are usually moments when we think, why are we even doing this? We often lament what was, even if was not so good. When we're currently going through something that isn't as green on the other side as we might have been expecting. And sometimes the places we find ourselves in are not pleasant and they can be painful. They're the ones we would just as soon forget. They're the times we find ourselves completely knocked off our feet. Now I wish that I was like given all knowledge and could have all the answers for why are we here on this particular point. I don't know why. I don't know why sometimes the paths that we are on hurt. I don't have a reason for all the times we get knocked off our feet. I don't have an answer for those moments. And there are a lot of things that I'm willing to say right here, Sunday morning. I don't know. But what I do know is that sometimes in my life and in your life, we are led to these moments and places in life so we can experience things that ultimately transform who we are and how we live from here on out. Sometimes I need to hear God telling me, Megan, there is no going back. We can't take the shortcut. There isn't an easy way out on this one. I know it's hard to see, but Megan, I promise you there's something ahead of you that you need to experience. It's in the middle of this mess in order for you to grow. Because you can't get to where we are going unless you travel this road first. Man, that's hard to hear. But then he says, so, pack your bags. Get your big girl boots on, and let's go. See, in the midst of our bad and uncomfortable circumstances, God uses those moments to deepen our faith and transform our hearts. Now, I don't believe God causes the bad and uncomfortable, but I do believe he uses them for his good and his glory. So here are the Israelites. They're crying out to Moses, and he answers them in the midst of their doubt and fear. He says in verse 13 and 14, he says, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Stand firm and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. This is a moment I kind of wish that I could just go back and erase that word. I don't like to be still. Do you like to be still? I can't really see, so I need a certificate. Do you like to be still? No. We don't like to be still. It's because you were tired. But we don't like to be still, especially when we don't know what's going on and we don't have ultimate control of it. We like to force things and push our way through. And God tells the Egyptians, tells the Israelites, I will fight for you. Just be still and patient. Now, I got to think that this probably wasn't a calm moment, because I'm sure Moses is like beyond frustrated with the Israelites. I mean, He's done all this work to help them get out to where they are, and now they're complaining again. And so this wasn't a, there, it will be okay. It's just fine. I think this was more a little bit of, would you chill out? Like, seriously, just chill out, stop, sit down, and be quiet, and pay attention to what's going to happen. God tells Moses in verse 16, raise your staff and stretch it out over your hand over the sea to divide the waters so the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground. So Moses raises his staff, and all throughout the night the waters parted on both sides of the sea, providing a dry path for the Israelites to pass through. Now, I don't know about you, but I want to claim this had to be an unbelievable moment. Now, there are some people that might be thinking, I don't know if that really happened. But as kind of Aaron alluded to last week, and I'm going to say this week, if Jesus can claim that he's going to die and rise from the dead and actually pulls it off and does it, God raises a man from the dead, yeah, he can probably part the waters. I'm okay with that. Can you imagine, though? Because I guarantee not one of those Israelites, the 2-3 million of them, thought, you know what, if God could just part the waters, we could get right through. I don't think that was happening because they were so focused on their circumstance, their misfortune, their frustration, their woe is me, why are we here, to even comprehend, you know what, I bet God could do something really awesome right now. And the bigger moment of faith and the bigger moment of trust was when Moses has his hands up and the waters are parted, and he says, go through it. Like, who pulled the short stick on that one to be the first one? Right? I would love to have seen this. To watch. And what I would love most is to see their eyes. It's kind of that, holy cow, dude, this is happening. Right? And I think after my own shock and awe, when Moses said, let's go, we got to go through, there's only one way to get there, I might have been, you know, what happens, Moses, if your arms get tired? Then the water's just going to come crashing down on us? But at the end of the day, what option did they have? They could go forward through the water, or they sit and get caught by the Egyptians. So regardless of their fear, their questions and their uncertainty, they moved forward through the water. 2 million plus of them. You see, part of our following and choosing to follow is our willingness to say, I don't know what lies ahead. And even in the midst of not knowing how this is going to end up or where this is going to go, I will move forward. I will choose to follow, and I will live into God's will for my life, even though I don't know how it's going to end up. And after the last of the 2 millionth Israelite made it through the waters, Moses raised his staff back over the water, and it came crashing down on the Egyptians who were now making their way through, thus saving the Israelites on the other side. Talk about a moment that leaves a mark in your life. Verse 30 in chapter 14, that day the Lord saved Israel from the hands of the Egyptians. And Israel saw the Egyptians lying dead on the shore. And when the Israelites saw the great power the Lord displayed against the Egyptians, the people feared. And this was an awe-inspiring fear, the Lord, and put their trust in him and in Moses, his servant. The people saw what God did. They saw God fighting on their behalf. They saw and experienced his great power, and they were in awe of what happened. And because of this, they put their trust in God and were never the same. This event left such a mark on Israel's history that they celebrated and they remembered year after year after year of what God did for them in Egypt and in the wilderness. And this journey, these moments, are passed down from generation to generation to generation. It was such a life-changing moment for them that we know the story. That's how much of a mark it left. Because God didn't take them on the shorter way. He took them the long way so that they could have a story and an experience that says, look what God did. He saved us from captivity, and he saved us from the waters. And now we are a new people with a new journey and a new experience in life. You see, sometimes we don't understand it. Sometimes we don't get it and we can't see it, but God leads us to places and moments so we can experience things that transform and change our life completely. And that changes how we live. And then because we choose to follow, it will change our families and it will change the generations after us and after and after. Can you imagine if you had a great-great-great-great-grandchild or somebody in your family, cousins or friends that said, I knew this person or this person in my family. They went the long way because God was leading them, and they experienced this, and it completely changed how our family history went. Because they're willing to trust and follow. When we are faithful to the direction that God leads us, the impact just isn't on our life. It has a ripple effect, and it will change generations to come. So God will lead you to that place in the moment. He leads us because He wants to transform us. He leads us down the road towards freedom from captivity, whatever captivity we are in. Financial struggle, addictions, bad relationships, disobedience, sinful lifestyles, hard hearts, bad decisions, painful circumstances, doubts, questions, whatever it is. If the Exodus story taught us anything, it's that there is no captivity too big for God. But the question for us is, along this journey, how will we respond? Because we know God has a tendency to take us on the scenic long way. So what is our response going to be during the trip? So as we close, I have a few thoughts for us. Stay the course. Pretty important one. In the midst of the journey, we may be tempted to fight. We may be tempted to resist. We may be tempted to peace out on the struggle. We may be tempted to take the shortcut and avoid the long day ahead. We might grumble and get ticked off. We might even ask the question, how in the world did we end up here? We may even consider going back to our old life. It was way easier. Because when I'm in that addiction, it's comfortable. And sometimes when we begin to move out of those things that we have been comfortable in, it's not so comfortable, and it's hard, and it's a struggle, and we have to consciously think about things. And man, it's just easier for me just to go back to this. God says, stay the course. Stay the course. Part of following is going through that struggle. Number 2 is take a risk, which is really funny because I don't like taking risks. But I read a Facebook post the other day that said, smooth seas do not make skillful sailors. Smooth seas do not make skillful sailors. So sometimes we have to do things that force us outside of our comfort zone and into uncharted territory. The Red Sea was scary and risky, and yet it was the only way for the Israelites to secure their freedom. They had to take the risk and go in. They had to enter the uncharted territory. They had to enter the non-calmness that they were sitting at on the shore. And sometimes we need to take a risk. We need to jump in with both feet and enter the unknown. It's in these moments that our faith has grown the most. However, we will never be skillful sailors. We will never be faithful followers if all we do is hang out on the calm waters. Smooth seas do not make a skillful sailor. And easy journeys do not make a faithful follower. Smile. I can't see you. I wish I could see you. All right, so I need everybody to smile. Are you smiling? Everybody? You can smile at how goofy I am. So along the journey, it's sometimes hard to smile, especially when we're having a really, really, really bad, crappy day. But if we take this conscious reminder, you know what? I got something to smile about. Smile and find the small wins. So here, if you have trouble thinking, here are just a few things for us. You are alive. That's a big win. I don't know if anybody's keeping track. It's a big one. We're alive. We have a place to lay our head. In this world, that's a big thing. And my family and my children are all alive at the end of the day. And they're breathing and they're doing well, and they say, Mom, I love you. That's a big win. And that's something I can smile about. You are loved, period. When that day is long, I want you to remember those words that you are loved. Even when you don't feel loved, I'm telling you, right here, I don't care who you are loved. You're loved by me, and you're loved by God. And for that, smile. Check that off as a win for the day. And just because our past might not look like what we thought, doesn't mean that life is terrible. There are many things that we can be thankful for, and with a fresh perspective, we can see as a win, and it's going all right. Because even on our worst days, there's something that we can smile about. Something that sometimes all we need is a small change of perspective to help us appreciate those things along the journey. So I don't know what your journey's like. We all have different ones. And I know it may be one of the hardest journeys that you've ever been on in your life. But I want to encourage you and challenge you that you are still alive. And that alone is something to smile about and be thankful for, because tomorrow is a new day. Tomorrow is a brand new day. It can always get better. I've got two more. Fourth is to let things go. I'm not going to start singing. You just got to let it go. Anybody like to be in control? Yeah. You got to let it go. I love this quote, Joseph Campbell. He said, "We must let go of the life we have planned so as to accept the one that is waiting for us." We must let go of the life we have planned so as to accept the one that is waiting for us. So many times we hold on to things and we try to control the ins and outs of our journey. And when we do this, we might be hindering the life that is ultimately waiting for us, the life that God has created for us. I like control. I do. But there are certain things that I can't control. And when I learn to let those go, my life is definitely less stressful, and I'm able to focus on listening and moving in the direction that God wants me to go. But if I always try to control my journey, I may miss something that God has that is so amazing that I never would get to experience otherwise. So let things go. Let it go. Couldn't resist. Sorry. Last one, trust. This is the hardest one of all. At some point along the way, we have to trust that God is in control and that He knows what He's doing. I love that the Israelites were led by God at all times, which means that He was not going to lead them somewhere that would ultimately end them. He didn't want to ruin them. He wanted to save them. He wanted to free them. He didn't lead them to the Red Sea to die. He led them to the Red Sea so they could see just how amazing He is, and then so they could live their life in freedom. I don't believe that God would do all this work in our life to lead us to somewhere that's going to end us. And although it may feel like that, at some point we need to trust that God knows what He's doing. There have been times in my life when I'd be like, God, I think I got this one. Man, every time I think I got it, I don't got it. And I'm reminded that there's a reason God is God and I am not. Along the way, we need to trust that God knows what He's doing. Sit back and enjoy the ride and be faithful with whatever He gives us, big or small. So remember that God sometimes leads us to places and moments so we can experience things that transform who we are and how we live. So my question is, A, how are you going to make it through the journey? What's your response going to be? And then what is God asking of you? Is there something that you're currently going through that He wants you to learn, or that maybe you can learn through it that can be used in the future? What are those moments in your life from, way long ago to now that you can look back and think, oh my goodness. Imagine had we gone that other route that looked a little easier, where we would have ended up, because it would not have ended up here. I had somebody in the first service come up afterwards and she said, I'm at that point now where I am looking back. And I think of all those times that I wanted to go this way, and God said, no, I want you to go this way. She said, imagine, Megan, if I had listened to my own self, where I would be. So as you think, what has your response been, and what will your response be moving forward? Because the journey's not over. Most of us are still in the middle of it. And so how are we going to respond along the way? So I challenge you to stay the course, even though it might get hard and rocky. Stay the course. Smile. Look for those wins. Accept that life happens and let go of what you can't control and don't need to control. Take a risk and trust ultimately that God knows what He's doing and is in ultimate control. So if we can do these things, our journey, they may not be easier. I'm not saying it's going to be easier. What I am saying, though, is it might be more manageable, and it will likely leave a lasting mark in your life and in the lives of those around you. So may we show others how to react and behave in the midst of life's long journey. And may we not try to take the easier way out, because it's not going to do anything. It's just easier. If it was easy, everybody would do it, right? We're not everybody. And God doesn't want us to be. He wants us to be different. Amen? Amen. Look at that. 12:08. Just in time. All right, we're going to pray. The band's going to come back up. We're going to do a song, do the offering, and then you guys can enjoy your Sunday. Sound good? God, we thank you ultimately for this day that you've given us. And we know that we all are on a journey of some kind. And some of us may be in the midst of the peak of our journey, and we're riding high. And so we celebrate that, and we smile, and we pay attention to all those wins that we are getting, and those moments of excitement and celebration. And Father, there may also be people here, they're in the valley. Father, may you surround them and hold them and remind them that you are Emmanuel, God with us at all times. And Lord, then there might be some of us who are climbing our way back up the mountain. And the days are long, and they're sometimes difficult and rocky, and we're not sure whether or not we just really go back to the valley because it's easier. Continue to push us forward, reminding us that even when we take one step, and it feels like a baby step, it's still a step forward. And may we continue to turn our eyes to you as we do. We know you are ever before us. Father, we thank you. We thank you that you will never leave us, ever. You will never forsake us. Continue to give us strength and courage. It is in your holy and awesome name that all of God's people said, amen. Will you please stand and receive your blessing this morning? May we go in the grace and the love of our Lord Jesus Christ, who calls us children and who tells us to be still and stay the course and hold on. And even though the journey's long, He will rescue us through it. Always. May you this week stay the course. May you be willing to take a risk. Smile at all times. Let go of the control and trust that God knows what He's doing. And may you hear the words that you are loved and a child of God. Amen and amen.